I'm John Nigerian, and we're about to break down for you exactly what happens when the tariffs are terrible and everybody runs around like this is a big shock that the president actually said, I think a week ago or more, he was going to do this on March 4th. But nonetheless, we're going to break that down, stocks and sports, here on the Rebel's Edge. Bang.
Here we go again, John. Rebel's Edge, baby. People are waiting for this like bated breath, man. They want to know what's going on in the market, and we're going to deliver it to them.
We are. I'm up here in Toronto, Pete, where they're so delighted that it's raining. The reason they're delighted by the rain, by the way, folks, is that means it's above freezing. And they've got more snow than they know what to do with. So at least the rain's melting the snow, because they were running out of places to put it, Pete. It was pretty bad.
Are they pretty ticked off about our president right now? You're up there in Canada, bro.
You know, I have not asked them.
Okay. Probably a good thing.
It would be interesting to ask. I'm sure I'll get a chance.
Sure.
To ask them. And if you know me, Pete, you know that there is no filter. So
there is no filter. I do know.
If I have a black eye or two tomorrow, you'll know why.
I think somebody else might get a black eye, not you, though.
They might.
They're messing with the wrong guy there.
Well, let's dive right into macro, Pete. I'm going to say macro minute today. U.S. factory orders, they rebounded in January because of commercial aircraft sales. But employment numbers from ADP do not look spectacular, Pete. Sort of like the short version might be, they were only half of what the street was looking for. So that's my macro minute.
Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. That's what we look at, right? We look at the data, we look at these numbers, we want to know the employment, we want to know the jobs numbers, everything else. But I think I'd even throw one last thing in there, John. Sentiment, as we've seen on the measurements, are absolutely awful. So you put all that together, you can understand why the markets are a little bit skittish here and there. We have some huge moves to the upside. We also have some follow-up moves to the downside. It's been a very, very volatile week already, and it's only Wednesday.
Well, volatile for futures as well, Pete, because Bitcoin's been all over the place. This thing is rocking up and down $5,000 or $6,000 every day. Mm-hmm. And today it happens to be up 5,000, but it could just as easily be down 5,000. Imagine a $90 stock that goes up or down $5 a day, Pete, because that's what's happening here. But I'll say instead that because OPEC kind of opened the spigots and they're pumping out a lot of oil, oil prices are going down, down, down. 65.33, I think, so far today was the price I saw, Pete. What do you got?
You know what I got, because you and I have been talking about this for a while now, and I think right now it might be the busiest time that I've seen this gentleman, we're going to call him a dude, right, 50 Cent, out there. And I'll say this, I haven't seen this many hits consistently daily. I don't think ever. I mean, we are just seeing volatility getting bought, the VIX calls being bought today. It's these May 35s against the May 75s, okay? So $40 spread, right? Pretty interesting. I mean, it's something I think you got to pay attention to. Costs them $1. That's not so bad. You know how we know it's 50 Cent doing it once again? Because it happened 50,000 times. That's why. This guy is unbelievable, and the amount of hits that we are seeing in the volatility index is absolutely extraordinary, something we all are keeping a closer eye on now than ever, because we're looking at a VIX that's trading anywhere between, let's call it, 23 to a little bit north of 26. And I don't know that it's going to stay at this level much longer before we might have another move to the upside, John. That's I'm not saying it absolutely is going to happen, but that certainly is what a lot of this option paper is telling us.
And the fact that 50 Cent has now focused, Pete, instead of being March and April, which is what he was trading mainly last week, now he or she have pushed it all the way out to May, as you said, and they're shorting call stupids, they call them,
Yep.
out in April and pushing the calls out till May. So we will keep an eye and we will report to you folks. By the way, if you want Pete and I reporting to you, we will be on News Nation at about 5:50 p.m. East Coast time tonight. That's News Nation with Connell, Pete. The guy is the greatest. He is just a fabulous anchor. Love working with him. And we'll be able to, sometimes they carry us over into that next hour, the 6 o'clock hour Eastern time, but we're supposed to be on right now at 5:50. So we'll see. But Pete and I will both be there, folks.
Should be fun.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about some of the stocks like CrowdStrike that are making big moves today, Pete. CrowdStrike beat on Q4 estimates. Guidance, though, disappointed investors. But, and I'll put an exclamation point on this one, Pete, many stocks, when they disappoint investors, will see a 20-24% drop. We've seen it across the board. This one, yeah, it was down more, and now it's only down 9%, but it was bought on that severe dip, Pete. It was not sold. So seems like CrowdStrike might be in a sweeter spot than many of these companies.
The only concern I have right now, John, is fundamentally this is an absolutely beautiful company. It really is, except for one particular number that I'm not very happy with, which is where is the PE of this right now? The price versus the earnings. It's at a 90. So that's pretty expensive. Now, we used to talk about NVIDIA in that light, right? And that was when NVIDIA was flying to the upside and it was making these great moves. We all loved the company. You and I loved the company, but it was getting kind of stretched. And I almost wonder right now if we're seeing that really kind of taking place, especially because of the fact that when you look at what this guidance was, like, as you said, the earnings themselves was fine. It was really just the guidance. And they talked about margins being a bit of a problem going forward. So I don't know, that the margin outlook is a little bit concerning to me. Some of the expectations that they were looking for in both sales and earnings down significantly. And we're talking about down, as much as 20+%. I think I'd be a little bit concerned about that. I like the company just like you do. I think they're right in the right spot, the sweet spot right now with cybersecurity. I just think that when you've got a stock that's got a 90 PE, you've got to be a little bit careful. It's a lot like what JP Morgan, John. I mean, great company, right? Jamie Dimon sold some up there. Why did he do that? Well, because it's probably a little bit stretched. And I think this is an example where it's a great company. We love the company, but it needed to come back and sort of, find itself again. That's where I think we sit right now with the CrowdStrike.
Well, next one, Pete, is pretty much a poster child for what we were just discussing as far as you miss on expectations, you're going to get hurt. And this one, Pete, it closed last night, folks. I'm talking about AeroVironment. AV is the stock symbol. It opened at 110, Pete. It closed last night at 141. So that's a freaking butt kicking. But you know what? Now it's only down basically 5 or 6% instead of down 24%. So somebody stepped in and bought the heck out of it, even though these results missed expectations fairly badly, Pete. Revenue down 10% year over year. It's drones, it's loitering munitions, they call them, something that stays behind and all that. Very interesting that it gets hit that hard and comes back so quick.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, the fact that it got down to 110, which, by the way, is the 52-week low established today, that was big. I mean, this is a stock that was getting absolutely pulverized to the downside. But to your point, all of a sudden they just started buying it and started to move this thing back up to the upside. And it's interesting too, John, because of the fact that when you look at the actual earnings and they lost 6 cents, they were actually expected to make 34 cents. That's not very solid right there. And then when you lower your outlook, not so great. But I think you could also say, well, what really caused them to have such a terrible quarter? Well, a lot of it had to do with the fires, and the other thing had to do with the drones that's going on with the war over there. Well, if the war in Ukraine starts to ease back at all and the president's able to get something done and hammer out some sort of a deal there, and we don't have those fires persisting every single day anymore, we had it for a while, that's over with for now. There's a lot of reasons that this thing could have a really nice, bright future. And I think that's what people were buying, where they were figuring, you know what? great opportunity to buy on this dip, and that's exactly what they did.
Well, again, another one, Pete, another one, to quote our our friend DJ Khaled is the best, Pete.
He is great.
He says, other one. Well, Abercrombie and Fitch, ANF. It's down 12% right now, but this one opened at 84. It has not bounced like the others, Pete. And it's another sign that maybe consumers are getting either pickier or are shunning some of these retailers, because for this one to be down this much and for them to give this kind of guidance, Pete, is not a good thing.
No, and you said it right. I mean, it's the guidance that's really killing them. Well, it's not just the guidance. They did beat on the earnings, but that guide was not just a miss, but a massive miss. And then when you look also, John, at the sales growth that they're projecting going forward is another one that's a big miss. You can understand, and we talk about this all the time. Are people getting a little bit strapped? Yeah. Are they going to go out there and buy this type of thing? Well, they are, but they're going to do it at TJX. We saw those numbers already, so we already know that. But I don't think this is one of those names that you need to chase at all. I think you could be very, very patient if you were interested in the retail space. It's a name like this one. I don't see any reason to jump on it right now. I know it's gotten pushed down to 52-week lows. It was underneath $80 today, John, on the lows. I'm not so sure this is one of those names that you could say, well, there's a good reason out there right now why this stock is going to jump all the way back 10, 20, 30 points. I don't see that coming, and I don't see any reason to jump in front of that train right now as it sits on these lows.
Well, how about this one, Pete? Bumble. Now the stock plummeted on the disappointing outlook. We talked about that maybe 2 weeks ago, Pete, something like that. Well, so for Bumble to tumble like this is pretty big because it's already done it until they got this news, Pete. Total average revenue per paying user, ARPU, as they like to say, fell to 2058 technically, I guess, from 2264. So that's a pretty big deal, Pete. That's a 10% drop right there. Is it surprising that the stock's down more than 10% then? Not really. Not when you got a revenue decline in the previous quarter and you're projecting another revenue decline in the coming quarter.
Right.
That ain't good news.
Yeah, it's bad for Bumble right now. You know, the revenue guide, as you said, was terrible. They're also losing clients out there. The users are declining. So that's another problem out there. I saw it today as well, John, that Piper Jaffray came out and said, you know what? We're going to have to lower this price target. They went from 8 to 7, and here the stock is sitting down there underneath 5. It was 460 last I looked. It could be somewhere else, but it's choppy. It is going to be choppy. I think it is choppy because of the fact that they just didn't hit any of the numbers that were out there that they had the opportunity to hit. And it's because people are kind of backing off, it looks like. So, you know, when you look at this one and you compare it to Match and some of the other names that are out there publicly traded, this is an area right now for Bumble where they're unfortunately in the decline across just about everything that you could measure. This is not a name I would go after at all. There's no reason to chase this one. And just because it's low doesn't mean it can't go lower, because it can.
Well, for those of you unfamiliar, and many of you men might be unfamiliar with it, this is a dating app where women make the first move.
Yeah.
So obviously there's a lot, Match.com and so forth has a lot of brands that both sides can swipe right or swipe left or however they want to do it. But in this case, the woman makes the first move. And apparently some of the women aren't real happy with some of the selection. That's all I got to say about it, Pete. All right. Let's take a look at the Kelsey brothers, Travis, and these guys are just the best. And no wonder somebody was smart enough to give them a lot of money for their podcast, because here's the two of them, Pete. We'll listen to it a little bit more than talking over it, but here's a little bit on Bill Murray on their show describing Roadhouse. So let's give it a listen.
So we recently reviewed Roadhouse, the original Patrick Swayze film.
Travis is already laughing.
There is a legend out there. You used to
A
call
legend.
the husband of Kelly Lynch. who plays Dr. Clay, anytime a particular scene came on with Patrick Swayze.
By the way, he's
television.
pretty awesome.
Is this rumor
He does a great job
true?
on these shows.
Yep.
One of the hardest things I ever had to do was to call a
One of the
friend.
hardest things.
And at a late hour, I mean, very, very.
Those two idiots.
And not
He's
without some
calling
back
him
and
at
forth.
like
Should
2
I,
in the
should I,
morning.
should I, shouldn't I? And as a friend,
Look at
I
the
couldn't
deadpan.
identify
Look at the
myself next to
deadpan on
Sid.
him.
As a friend.
As a
As
friend,
a friend.
I think you should probably turn on TBS right now. Because that son of Pat Swayze slam it to your wife.
Against a brick wall.
It's like an ab workout listening to
Swayze,
Bill.
may he rest in peace. Did a lot of wonderful things. A beloved guy, but that was wrong what he did.
That's why you're a legend, man.
That's why he's the legend.
It is, and it's why he's a legend. You know, the interesting thing about that whole thing, John, is, as you know, probably if you remember this or not, I don't know, but the Sheik, our father, did a kidney transplant on Kelly Lynch. So we have a little bit of tie-in for that. So that's kind of interesting too. I think either she
Yeah,
got
for some reason, I was supposed to date her, Pete.
Well, you got fixed up and you screwed it up, my man.
I screwed it up, but so Bill Murray could have been calling me, Pete.
That's
Hey,
right.
John, you might want to put on TBS right about now.
You might want to click the clicker. All right, John.
Because that SOB, Patrick Swayze.
Well, from two NFL brothers to the two brothers covering the NFL, I wanted to jump on this, John. So I'll give you my top 5 right now as far as this, but we're going to jump on to something else. So I think Tennessee takes Cam Ward. They need a quarterback. He's probably the best quarterback that's coming out. I think he's better than Sanders, so I think he goes there. Abdul Carter goes to Cleveland. You know what? All of a sudden, Myles Garrett might start scratching his head thinking, I got a guy on the other side, and so now I'm going to get a lot more single blockers coming on me. I think that could be pretty interesting. Maybe that keeps Myles Garrett there, John. So we'll see how that plays out. Travis Hunter goes to the Giants. Best player still sitting on the board. New England, I think, takes an offensive lineman because there's so many really good tackles. But I think there are a couple that stand out. I'll go with Will Campbell there. And then Jacksonville, I think, takes Mason Graham from Michigan. This kid is a beast. He's big,
Kid's a
fast,
beast.
and he's a mean son of a gun too, John. And he, last year, unreal year. This past year, another really, really great year. So I think that's where Jacksonville goes. But here's one for you. The depth this year, where is the deepest part? And I'll give you where I think, and I'll see if you agree or not. But the deepest part of the draft for this year, and this comes on the heels of Saquon Barkley signing a $42 million 2-year extension or whatever it is, $21 million a year. Not so bad for a running back. It's the biggest ever. So that, and you know what? I think all of us would say deserved. This guy is a freak. He's unbelievable. And now that he's got an offensive line and a good quarterback, with him, he could be really good for the next 2, 3, 4 years. Not just good, but again, at the very top of this whole thing. So what is the deepest part of the draft this year? I'm going to say it's running backs. And here's why, John. You've got Ashton Genty, the kid from Boise State, who literally just about hit every record there is out there. You've got Junkins and Henderson, both from Ohio State. I mean, these guys are unbelievable. You've got Caleb Johnson over at Iowa, who's big, fast, strong, and he's just one of these. Iowa puts out more talented athletes at tight end and offensive line, of course, defensive lineman, of course. The great corner this past year that on his birthday returns the ball for a touchdown. I mean, they just have talent for a team that doesn't seem to really be in the mix at the end of the year, but they have some spotty guys that are unbelievable. I think that Hampton kid out of North Carolina is unreal. Sampson out of Tennessee. I mean, the depth there at running back, I think, is the deepest of all of them. Do you agree, or what's your thoughts right now if you were looking at the draft and knowing what these GMs are looking at? And by the way, because it's so deep, that actually could push some of these guys a little bit deeper into the draft too, because there's so many of them that are damn good.
We really are, Pete. And I'm sure it wasn't lost on you, but my Bears signed Ryan Tannehill as the backup. I'm not saying they're trying to sign him to scare Caleb Williams,
Right.
but obviously Caleb had a rough year last year. I think he led the league in sacks.
Yes.
And not in the right way either. But a lot of that is not his fault. Unlike Shadur, he gets rid of the ball pretty fast, Pete.
Yeah.
Shadur, that is one of the big raps on him that I'm hearing from GMs and so forth, Pete, is that he holds onto the ball too long. Great arm, good instincts as a quarterback, pretty cocky, but again, quarterbacks are cocky. As long as he's nice to the O-line, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But if you're cocky to your O-line, he ain't going to have a long career.
No.
Wherever he goes. But he holds the ball too long.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you put Brady again, and Brady's a friend of his because he's a friend of Deion's.
Yep.
And he, when the kid was young, Brady used to work with him and things like that. Well, Brady should have told him to get rid of that ball faster. And, hopefully he'll be able to, Pete, because big difference between pro and college. One of the biggest differences, I think, is how long the quarterbacks hold the ball. They don't.
Right.
There's a lot of them like Brady. He's throwing sub 2 second.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking and then boom. You're looking and then boom. It's fast. If you hold it 3.9 and things like that, somebody's going to be swiping at your arm because as fast as those and strong as those defenders are, they're coming for you.
I'll tell you, one of those guys who gets rid of it quick, and it was showed when he got that playoff game, and it was the Rams and Vikings. I'll tell you what, Matthew Stafford gets rid of the ball. And he does, and he's big, he's tall, he's got good receivers, but he gets rid of the ball. And it gives him that advantage, I think, and that's why the Rams have done so well. It's why they just re-signed him. And if you didn't think that was going to happen, I did. Everybody said, oh, yeah, he's going to take money from somebody else and he's going to leave this thing. Of course, we all have to guess where it would be if he were to leave. I never thought he was going to leave, especially with the fact that the NFL this past year jumped up another $22 million on the salary cap. It got a lot more room for him to be signed. So it made a lot of sense. All right, speaking of money, and you and I are money guys. We also love the sports. We both played linebacker at the NFL and all the rest of it. John, Stevie Billions Cohen is absolutely unbelievable. And I just wanted to run this by you because I don't think enough people really pay attention to this side of Major League Baseball. So how about this? The 4 years that he has now owned the Mets, he has spent $1.36 billion on the guys, right? That is more than the Marlins did in 21 seasons, than the Pirates did in 21 seasons, than the Rays have done, Tampa up here, in 21 seasons. He spent more money than those three franchises in 21 years in the last 4 years. Stevie wants to win. And I'll tell you what, if you're a Mets fan, you better just love the fact that this guy is doing everything in his power to get this team into the finals and into the World Series and have the opportunity, hopefully, to play. Has it happened? Well, you can't always buy it, but I'll tell you what, you can sure get a lot of guys. How about the fact that he signed this Juan Soto, John, $765 million contract? I don't know. It seems to me at 162 games and all the rest of it, this guy's getting paid pretty damn good every single game, every single week. It's unbelievable. And Stevie Cohen had a great line, and I thought I'd read this one to you because I know you know him. I know him a little bit just because his wife had Lyme disease, and so my wife who has Lyme disease, there's a little bit of a tie in there. We have our guy Kalasian, another Armenian buddy of ours who works with us here, who used to work with Stevie Cohen. But here's Stevie's line. If you're willing to be amazing, you've got to be willing to be uncomfortable. Now, I like that line because I think that's applicable to just about everything, right? I mean, you're going to be uncomfortable when you put your money into the, hey, Meta's going to beat, or you put money into this or whatever, right? And I think that's exactly what it's like. It's why he's successful is he's willing to be uncomfortable even when, he feels pretty good about it, but he's pretty damn uncomfortable about making that move. And Stevie Cohen's an amazing guy. I don't know if you've got any stories or anything or whatever, but I just love the fact that a guy like that is willing to give that money away to his guys, man. He wants to win the World Series.
Yeah. And, Pete, you talked about Juan Soto with the $700+ million deal. He also re-signed Pete Alonso.
Mm-hmm.
So he's keeping some of the key people there. And they were pretty amazing last year until they faded.
Yeah.
But I think he is definitely one of those owners that is very, very involved, wants to win, loves the Mets. It's always been a dream of his to own the team, and now he does.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to give them every opportunity to win. And by the way, the guys on the other side of town in the Bronx, they want to win pretty bad too.
Yeah, they do.
And they spend the money. They open up the wallet almost as much as Stevie.
Yeah.
And Magic, who did win it this past year with the Dodgers, he doesn't mind spending money either, Pete.
No.
So this is it's those three teams are just making these players wealthier than avarice. It's amazing.
Yeah, you're right about the Dodgers and Magic Johnson. Let me tell you something. You got to love the guy because he was one of the greatest athletes, one of the best basketball players in the history of the NBA and college and everything at Michigan State. And what he did with the Lakers and all of that, John, and the fact that he's an owner of all these various things from Starbucks to teams and everything else in between. He's a pretty amazing businessman. He really, truly is. You got to love Magic. And is he ever anywhere without his smile? No. He's awesome.
Yep. Love him.
Yep.
Absolutely spectacular dude.
Yep.
All right, folks. Now we're going to give you a shameless plug for RebelCon because RebelCon 2025 is going on out in Las Vegas at the MGM Grand. It will be spectacular. Again, if you're somebody who's been nervous the last 2 weeks with the talk of tariffs and then tariffs hitting, and who knows, maybe tariffs get reduced. And when they do, the market just pops to the upside or whatever. If you want to be ready for opportunities like that, come join us in Las Vegas, March 22nd, because we'll be giving you strategies that will work in up markets, down markets, sideways markets. You just have to come and enjoy meeting a whole bunch of other traders that are similarly minded to you. They want to use options to leverage up. They want to use options to take less risk and to diversify their portfolio. You can do it too. Make sure you check out RebelCon 2025 out at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. Just scan the QR code and you could be there too. All right. Well, I guess we'll see you tomorrow, Pete, at 1 p.m. Eastern Time.